Congresswoman Karen Bass plans to announce run for mayor of Los Angeles.
Karen Bass today officially kicked off her campaign to replace Eric Garcetti as mayor of Los Angeles.
Congresswoman Karen Bass is kicking off her campaign for mayor of Los Angeles.
Yeah.
Congresswoman Karen Bass has her sights set on the mayor's office.
On March 17th, Congressmember Karen Bass, who's running for Los Angeles mayor, called me to learn more about what veterans were experiencing at the West Los Angeles VA in Brentwood, what was once known as a National Soldiers' Home. Karen Bass has been leading the conversation in ways to solve homelessness in Los Angeles, and it was a privilege to be able to share this information with her.
The biggest issue regarding LASA, St. Joseph's, Step Up on Second, all of these Los Angeles initiatives to help homelessness in Los Angeles, I believe that it is a disservice to LA to use those services for veterans. Veterans have the ability and should be housed on that land, the hundreds of acres that are there to be a home for veterans. When a veteran is using LASA, Step Up on Second, any other facility other than the VA where they're supposed to get their services, their care, it's supposed to be their community, it's actually hurting everyone else in LA. And with veteran homelessness being the epicenter or capital of our country, it's clear that that property in the VA is not being utilized in the manner it should be. And so the way the VA is housing veterans on the property is inhumane. It's not actually housing them. It's not a home. And like I said, the conditions are actually more inhumane than I've witnessed people who are spending time in a prison. And I can give you very clear, yeah?
Well, let me ask you, when you say that the housing, like within 90 days, they're back out on the street, why?
Because the city is not actually finding permanent housing for these people. Homelessness has not gotten better in this city with any of these services. They're actually all just being recycled through and then back on the street. And the issue, yep.
Are you saying that that they are only allowed to stay someplace so many days and then they put them out?
Correct. Most of those temporary housing services that I'm mentioning, LASA, etc., are 90-day programs, 90-day vouchers, hotel room key, 90-day vouchers.
Right.
Within those 90 days, veterans are told that they are guaranteed permanent housing. I have a specific veteran who was a combat veteran, stepped on an explosive, landed on his head. He has brain trauma. He is clearly 100% disabled veteran. On his 88th day in the LA City services, he was sent back on the street. I originally met him on Veterans Row. He was on the curb outside of the VA, outside of the gate. When the sheriffs came on August 1st and stayed until November 1st until the curb was clean, he was put into a temporary place. But again, and he kept saying, am I guaranteed permanent housing within the 90 days? They kept saying yes. And on the 88th day, he ended up back in a tent on the VA property.
Oh my God. My God. Now, do some of them, not the case you just mentioned, but do some of the vets fall out because they're also, when they put them in temporary housing, they're also not giving them the supportive services they need? Like that guy, for example, aside from needing medical, he also needed mental with the trauma that he experienced. Do they not get that?
The veterans are not getting any of the services they need. I believe that the VA has a system set up to deny services for veterans. And the reason being, because they want to show in time that, I don't know how familiar you are again with the 1888 deed in the land of...
I am.
Okay, so that was originally 1,000 acres through 4 different deeds. 1,000. Today it's 388. There is nothing supposed to be on the 1,000 acres that doesn't serve veterans. And you have Brentwood School, which costs $40,000 plus. Well, that is illegal. That's an illegal land lease. The only reason they get away with illegal land leases is because they are able to say that that property is too big. It's not it's not needed to serve veterans, but that's a lie. At one time, 4,000 to 5,000 veterans lived on the property during the North Korean War and after. And since then, since the 80s, they'd started illegal contracts and they systematically began denying services for veterans and turning the property into a stakeholder for the wealthy people in Brentwood. When it became longer that you and I were talking, it was my biggest fear that this will never change because these people are the ones spending more money towards politicians than any city in the country. And that's, I mean, Brentwood specifically, where that land is residing.
Wow. That's pretty heavy. Yeah, no, I represent, my district begins across the street now. Ted Lieu represents that area, but when I was in the State House, I represented the area, and so I am familiar with the deed. It's actually gotten a little better in the sense that before they had all kinds of things. They had a car rental agency there. They had all kinds of things.
It's really not
had nothing to do with vets.
Yes, exactly. They've had laundry washing services for hotels nearby. Mind you, veterans sleeping on the property are only allowed one washing load a week. There was a national commander from the GI Forum that visited a few weeks ago. He was shocked to learn that veterans, 100 plus of them, are sleeping in, again, these tiny homes that they don't get a key for, that they only are allowed to do one load of laundry a week.
Yeah, how many people you have in
So
here?
right now our census is at 106, and we're doing a couple admissions right now.
Yeah. So the gentleman a while ago, he said you only have a one laundromat, one washing machine.
Yeah, at the Welcome Center right now, I know with our new trailer that's going to be coming soon, we're going to have 2 washer dryers here
For all
on
these
site
people?
for
Wow.
everybody here, and so they'll be able to do laundry. It just takes time, I guess, to purchase and get it over here, but it is on the way.
That they are served the most malnutritious, awful, cold meals, that if they don't get to it in the time they're supposed to, the rats and such get to it. They aren't allowed visitors. There is no bathroom, water in their 8x8 tiny shed, where if they do leave it, they can't lock it. There's situations where a veteran can't do their laundry, enough of it, so they have to do laundries at other places. And when they leave this property, they need to bring everything and all their valuables with them, which creates environments that if something happens, they get into an altercation, they end up losing everything. And those exact instances have happened. That tiny home little situation is in a program called CTRS, Care, Treatment, Rehabilitation, and Services. It's supposed to be temporary. The idea is it's transitional, but there's people, veterans, that want to work, get a job. How do you go from 9 to 5 to your job, but you don't get a key and you can't lock your front door? And when you get home, the showers limit ends at 3:30 p.m. So you can't take a shower when you get home. And all of these rules creates chaos. It creates, I believe, mental instability. And I think that whatever veterans are going through, they are putting them through something substantially worse that's creating way bigger issues between the veterans themselves, their own psychologically. They are not getting better in this CTRS or any of these private contracted facilities on the VA right now.
What do you think should happen right now?
I think there's immediate things that should happen regarding the showers should be open at all times. I think the veterans in tiny homes should get their keys immediately. This is something that I have been documenting of why they don't have their keys, and there's been no answers. There's been no clarity other than we don't know how to give them their keys. At first they said it was almost like they didn't think veterans are capable of returning a key, and if they didn't, they weren't able to remake keys. I mean, I've heard every excuse that is ridiculous and unreasonable. So insulting, that's absolutely correct. We trust them with guns and bullets overseas, but not keys when they get home. Those are immediate things that I think would help change the mindset and mentality of veterans. But I think the biggest number one thing is veterans should be in buildings. There's a building called Building 220 that used to have veterans living in the building. That building is now occupied by UCLA. When UCLA got the baseball field, they actually don't, as far as I understand, but they don't pay for that baseball field. Instead, what they did in the contract, they got the baseball field and a building. Why did they get the building? Because then they said, we're gonna serve veterans in the building. I've been to that building. It seems vacant. Veterans aren't getting...
Did you say 220?
Yeah, it's called Building 220. It's the most substantial building there. Why? Because it used to house veterans. It's very big. There are rooms not used in the building, and it towers over all of the tents and tiny homes that veterans are sleeping in. They are towered over by this building that UCLA runs while they sleep in tiny homes and walk to use porter potties.
Okay, well, wow, you said a lot. You said a whole lot. Let me follow up on some of it. The showers at all time, the keys that they don't have, and the building occupied by UCLA. Well, when I was there, I was actually stunned. I mean, all of the years that I have passed that facility, I had no idea how big it is. And that all of the buildings on the property, and they're all like falling apart. And they've already done the environmental study on the entire property. And there are builders that are under contract to build housing there. The issue that we raised was, you say you have a couple of hundred vacancies. Well, why aren't people in housing? And then to move them from tents outside of the VA to inside the VA was no solution in my mind at all. Tents or tiny homes, either one of them. So let me follow up on these points, and then I'll give you a call back. I'm in DC right now. I'm getting ready to leave and fly back. But let me follow up on this.
I guess I'll just leave it off with saying that veterans were supposed to have housing built on the VA with a lawsuit that was settled, and the homes were already supposed to be built, but the VA gets contracts to do things and then never follows through with actually the housing. And the one thing that's happening right now with legislation is they're trying to take the 388 acres and say, actually, veterans don't need that. Veterans only need 80 acres. And if we give veterans 80 acres, then we will give them homes by 20, and I don't know the exact date, but it's like in the future, of course.
Legislation where? State or federal?
Federal. And I can get you that like actual legislation that is discussing that they want to dwindle it down to 80 acres. The rest would be parks for Brentwood, campuses for UCLA.
Like they need that.
Correct. Absolutely.
Well, one of the things that they did that just made me crazy was they had the resources to build housing, and they were supposed to do the environmental study. Instead of doing the environmental study on a part of the property, they decided to do it on the entire campus, which took an entire 2 years. And they could have had the housing built and people could have been in it for a long time. So federal legislation to reduce the acreage.
Yes, and I think it's really careful how we use our words. It's really never should be a campus. It was never intended to be a campus. The veterans that are supposed to be using the services on the land are supposed to call it a home. It's actually very clear that it's not supposed to be a donation for them. It's actually supposed to be there for them because we thank them for their service. They're disabled, they're in need, and we want them to feel like they are there because they deserve it. So calling it a campus, you come and go. They're not patients they're not patients there, and they should be residents, and it's a home. And that the wording is very clear when you look up the original deeds. Home, that was the intention. They later changed the words, removed the word soldiers home from all of the plaques, and they started trying to call it a campus so that they can get people to come and go.
Wow, very good point. Okay, well, let's talk again sometime next week. And you see my number. You can use this phone, but I'll give it to you you another number as well, okay?
Okay, I do not see the number. It just says wireless caller. So if you just want to text me or anything, I will have it. And I'm more than thankful for your call and happy to speak anytime.
Okay, all right. Thanks a lot for your work.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Bye-bye.
Dude, that could be the future mayor of LA. Likely. The first black woman mayor of Los Angeles. Very likely.
Let's hope.
She's right now a Congress member for Los Angeles, one of the most respected politicians from LA. Like, yeah, man. She listened, but talk or not? I don't know, champ.